Yes.
Thank you for answering my questions. My name is Joy.
Hi, Joy.
And it's an answer to prayer to be here. So here they are. 3 real quick questions,
Okay.
a little complicated. How do I know if I am saved if I have blasphemous thoughts? Should I be taking communion if I am not sure if I am saved? If I am not chosen, would I even care about being saved?
Really good questions, Joy. You have a wonderful name, but sometimes it's hard to live up to, isn't it? I mean, how would you like to be named Joy and have to always be assumed to be possessing all of that? I can hear the cry of your heart, Joy. I want to make it as simple as I can. The fact that you are asking these questions is evidence of the work of God in your heart. It is evidence of your desire for Him and for salvation and to know Him. That is evident there. The fact that you would stand up in front of all of us and unbear your heart in such a sweet and honest way is evidence of the hunger of your heart to know Him, and I think that's what you're essentially saying. The way you know that you are saved is by your desire. Do you desire to know God?
Yes.
Do you desire that He would know you and love you?
Yes.
Do you desire to love Him?
Yes.
Do you desire to honor Him?
Yes.
Do you desire to obey His word?
I do, but I can't do it on my own strength.
Well, of course not. Join the club. And that's why we're all here. This is the same with all of us. It's all of grace, isn't it? It's all of grace. The Apostle Paul in Romans 7 helps us because this is the Apostle Paul. This is the one that we would elevate as the supreme example of a Christian. And he says, he calls himself a wretched man because he says, I do what I don't want to do and I don't do what I want to do. He said, there is a principle in me that loves the law of God, but I see another principle in me warring against the principle of my mind, and it's the principle of my flesh, and it causes me to do the very opposite of the things I want to do. And he says, oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from the body of this death? And that's a very interesting illustration. One of the ways that murderers were punished in the ancient world was that the victim that they had murdered was strapped to their body, and eventually the decay from the corpse would destroy them. Paul feels, even though he's a believer, that he's got the dead body of his sinful nature still tied to him. So what you're saying to me is essentially the same cry that came out of the noblest of all Christians. And that very cry is evidence of the work of God in your heart, that you desire to know God, to be loved by God, to love God, to honor God, to obey God, and that you know you can't is a statement of a genuine believer, because you recognize that you aren't everything you should be, and you are utterly dependent upon God Himself and upon the Holy Spirit. That's true of your salvation. You can't save yourself and you can't sanctify yourself. So you're where all honest Christians live. You're saying, I'm not what I want to be, but I know what I want to be. I'm not what I ought to be, but I know what I ought to be. It's about direction. It's about affection. It's about love. And we've talked about that recently when Jesus was restoring Peter. In John 21, he said 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And Peter had been caught in disobedience again. And yet he said, Lord, you know me, you know I love you. Then feed my sheep. He accepted the failing life of Peter, the tendency to be disobedient, and even maybe to have ungodly thoughts, which is just part of that remaining sin nature. But he accepted that man, and he accepts all of us if we love him, and calls on us to love him more. So you don't want to evaluate the character of your salvation by your failures. You want to assess the genuineness of your salvation by your desires, by what you love, what you long for, what you want. And you're here. And that says everything. This is not a place for people running from God. This is a place for people running to Him. But asking the question is important. The purest joy, to kind of play on your name a little bit, the purest joy in the Christian life comes when we are obeying Him, loving Him, serving Him, worshiping Him. That's when we enjoy the most assurance. Security is one thing. Security means that I am saved and He will keep me until I see Him face to face. I'm secure in Him. That's not assurance. Assurance is the confidence I have in my mind of my salvation. Many people are saved, they're secured by God in that salvation, but they don't always have the assurance. Why do we struggle with assurance? Because we know our weakness, because we know our temptations, because we know we're not what we ought to be. Sometimes because we fall into a pattern of sin and we lose our assurance. Sometimes because perhaps we have been taught wrongly that you might do something that cause you to lose your salvation, and that generates a certain amount of fear. But to go back to the main point, the very desire of your heart is the evidence of the work of God in your life, because unregenerate enemies of God don't have those desires. Okay? Does that help?
Thank you.
Thank you, Joy.